Your little athletes have big goals. Marana Pee Wee Soccer registration is now open for kids ages 3 through 6. Visit maranaz.gov/recreation to sign up now. Uniform t-shirt is included. Join in the fun.
Are you interested in a career in law enforcement or simply want to know more about policing? Attend the Marana Citizens Police Academy every spring and fall. This 13-week academy is taught by employees and officers and showcases several units within the department, including crime scene, canines, and SWAT. For more information, visit www.maranaz.gov/MPD.
Welcome to Real Talk with the Town, where I sit down with the Marana staff to answer your burning questions about our beautiful community. My name is Terry Rozema, and I'm the town manager for the town, so let's get started. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Real Talk with the Town. My name is Terry, and I am your host, and today we're going to be talking about the RTA. That's right, the Regional Transportation Authority. And today I have with us, actually, the Executive Director of the Pima Association of Government, Farhad Moghimi. Farhad, go ahead and say hello to our listeners for me.
All right, hello. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, so Farhad, we were talking a little bit before we got started here, and you've had a number of positions in government, and one of those positions happened to be with our beloved town of Marana. Tell me a little bit about your experience when you worked here and kind of what it was like during that time.
I started working for Marana back in 1997, so I'm dating myself. I started as a town engineer, public works director, and I was with the town for about 6 years. That was way back when there was only McDonald's and Burger King on Cotero Road. There was nothing else on Cotero Road back then. I can tell you our offices and our meetings were out at the public works yard on Sandario Road, and having been with the town for 6 years, and then since then, I'd love to see all the progress, lots of growth, lots of roads and buildings and commercial and residential. Wonderful growth opportunity in this town, and you guys have done a great job.
Well, thank you, Farhad. I appreciate that endorsement. And I'm sorry that you didn't get a chance to work and live in these beautiful facilities that we have now. It's come a long way, hasn't it?
Exactly. Interesting enough, I was one of the project managers on this project, and I left right before it got started, construction. So yes, I missed the opportunity to have a place in this building, but it's a beautiful building.
Well, thank you, and certainly appreciate your service to the town of Marana and to your service to the Pima Association of Government and the RTA. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. First of all, tell me about your involvement with the RTA. How did it start? Why did it start? And what are the benefits? So let's start with first, when and why.
Yeah, so I got to go back and talk about PAG a little bit. PAG, Pima Association of Governments, was organized roughly about 50 years ago by all the governing entities within Pima County. And the purpose of PAG and all regional organizations similar to PAG is to identify opportunities for collaboration and pooling resources to tackle some of the challenges that not any one entity can do on their own. So 50 years, fast forward, we have 9 governing entities now within the PAG organization. Those are all the cities, towns, county, tribal government, and the state. The purpose of PAG was exactly to identify needs and tackle those needs. One of the needs that came up in 2004 was a lack of funding for transportation facilities and an enhancement of regional facilities that, again, no one entity could do by themselves. Back in 2004, prior to that, City of Tucson on its own and Pima County on its own several times went out to the voters, and those were very specific initiatives that failed. all the governing bodies.
Similar transportation.
Similar transportation initiatives, yes.
So City of Tucson wanted to do some projects. They needed money to do that, tried to get a half cent or some similar amount. County, same thing.
Exactly.
And both of those failed with the voters.
Both of them failed.
Okay.
And at that time, the leadership decided to let's work together. Let's identify an opportunity that as a region, we can put a plan together and prioritize regional projects and then go back to the voters with a plan that would have a revenue source, which is a half-cent sales tax, that's countywide, and a list of projects that the voters would approve. So back in 2006, with the current RTA plan, the voters approved the plan for $2.1 billion based on a half-cent sales tax across the county. So we are 17 years into that plan currently, and the plan has been very successful. We've been able to deliver most of the projects on that list, with the exception of 4 that we are considering to move those projects to the next RTA plan, which is already under development.
Excellent. So you said the RTA has been successful. I want to talk about some of those successful projects that are taking place or have taken place already right here in our wonderful town of Marana. If you could kind of fill us in on, because I think it's important for people to know, if you're spending an extra half cent on every dollar that you spend, what is my money getting me?
Exactly.
And I think people forget some of these major projects that have been funded by this half cent.
Exactly. Yes. So if you look at the projects that were in the 2006 RTA plan, and I'm happy to tell you all of those in this region have already been, in the northwest part of the region, have already been completed. The very first one was the Twin Peaks traffic interchange. I can tell you the story from my earlier days. Twin Peaks traffic interchange started as a concept way back in the mid-'80s, and if you can imagine, didn't you, Farhad? I seem to recall. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but is this the one where you sat and drew something out on a napkin? Yes, it is.
With the then town manager.
Yes, it is, and the mayor,
Mike Hines, maybe.
Mike Hines and Mayor Honey.
And they said, "Now, how are you going to do that?" And you said, "Well, you just do that," and you drew it out on a napkin. Is that true?
I did.
I wish you still had the napkin. You don't have it,
yeah,
do you?
I got to look for it. I'm sure it's somewhere in the storage.
Okay.
But so yeah, great memory there. So really, most of these ideas have been ideas that have been in the books for a long time, and we've been trying to develop it. But at the end of the day, financing these projects have been a challenge. So Twin Peaks traffic interchange was a concept that we felt that we need a second main access to all the growth area on the west side of I-10. Cotero was the only access. Mm-hmm. And we had meetings up here at the old town hall facility that people showed up and they said, we got to do something about that. And again, thankfully for the collaboration of everybody in the region and the town and working with the state, we were able to partner with the state to identify funding, a partnership agreement between the state and town of Marana to be able to fund a portion of the project using impact fees from the town, a portion from Arizona State Department of Transportation, and then there was a big portion missing, and then that's where the RTA came into the picture. And once the RTA was developed and approved, the additional funding needed for that project was funded through the RTA. So Twin Peaks traffic interchange, again, you all can see the benefits of that interchange, not only providing a second access to all the residential areas to the west, but all the commercial that's now following to the east, as well as the connection all the way back up to Dove Mountain and on Tangerine Road. That connection was also a significant connection that was sorely needed at the time. Mm-hmm. So I would consider that as one of the success stories, early success stories of the RTA working with the town to deliver that project. That project was delivered early on in the program. Since then, we had the Ina Road traffic
And that
interchange.
was, I will say, I can speak personally about that one because I used to live in Continental Ranch at the time before that was built.
Yep.
And I used to have to drive, and I lived less than a half a mile from where the Twin Peaks interchange is. And so I would have to drive down Coastline, all the way down Silver Bell, all the way down Cortero Farms to get onto the interstate.
Yep,
And it
yep.
was not fun.
And even
that
at
was
the
a
time-
wonderful addition to
and even
our
at the time, Cotero Road traffic interchange, even back then, was congested, and we had all this traffic really coming into to the residential areas, and it served as a cul-de-sac. People had to go back all the way to Cotero to get back to I-10. So Twin Peaks provided that second access, which was crucial for many reasons. And then the growth opportunity on the west side with the outlet malls and everything else that's come in. So that was envisioned early on by the leadership in the town, and I'm really excited to see the results of that. And you can see the benefit to the community and to the traveling public, regardless of where you live. It doesn't just benefit people in Marana; it benefits people from Oro Valley, Pima County, anywhere else that travels that section of the road. Similarly, Ina Road was completed, and Ina Road, same concept. We had a major concern was the at-grade crossing with the Union Pacific at Ina Road, and even the way the traffic interchange was functioning. It was not safe, and we early on recognized that needs to be a grade separated crossing. So that was included in the RTA plan as a grade separated crossing, again with partnership with the town as well as ADOT, and glad to see that completed as well. A lot of these projects, and I got to put a shout out for all the businesses. I mean, we recognize how difficult it is, how challenging it is for the businesses to live through 2-3 years of construction. But we're really grateful for the partnership. Most of them understand that. Most of them recognize that it's necessary, it's needed, and then hopefully post-construction, they recognize that it was definitely a pain that was worth going through.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, let me ask you this. The cost of those two projects. I think it's important for people to kind of understand the magnitude. Okay, so you built a bridge over the freeway and over the railroad so we can get from one side to the other safer. But what does that translate into in dollars and cents?
Sure. So early on, so it's so relative these days. So early on, especially with Twin Peaks interchange, we had roughly about $36 million in the budget for Twin Peaks interchange. I think by the time we were able to complete that, we were closer to $40 million for various unknown.
Man, what I wouldn't give to be able to do an interchange for $40 million now.
Exactly. That's why I said that, because it's all relative. So here we are almost 10 years later. That same traffic interchange would be closer to $200 million.
Yeah.
So that is the reality of what's happening with the economy and the inflation and the supply chain.
So we got a
challenges.
bargain, is what you're telling me.
We got a bargain
on
at the
Twin Peaks.
at the right time and at the right location.
And Ina Road interchange costs about how much?
Same thing. Ina Road interchange, again, that one was obviously a partnership with the state and RTA and the town. That included the bridge over Santa Cruz, which added to the cost. I want to say that was roughly in the $100 million range by the time the entire package came together. But again, that was even at the time a good deal. That project, if you were going to do that today, is probably going to be over $250.
Wow. So
and then Tangerine was the last one on the current RTA plan. Tangerine Road, again, I keep dating myself here. We started talking about improvements to Tangerine Road back in the 80s. That was a state route. The state wanted to improve Tangerine Road. They went through various studies and engagement with the public and identifying different options. And ultimately, they came back and they just said there's just not enough money to do it. That's when the RTA later on came back and we said, no, that's a regional road. Marana, Pima County, Oro Valley, and the state, all the partners at the time felt that that project really needs to be done. And that's why it was included in the RTA plan. And the phases of that have already been completed, both in Marana, Oro Valley. Those phases have been completed, and there's the final phase that is broken down to 2 other subsections, and we hope to have those completed within the next 5 years as well.
Yeah, and that is a beautiful stretch of road, beautifully landscaped, 4 lanes divided. I travel it every day, so that's how I know. I really love driving down Tangerine. Now, tell me about because there was another one that is not going to be in the RTA, is going to go hopefully into the RTA next. The Silver Bell Road projects. Would that be another one?
Yes, Silver Bell Road is one of those projects that was crossing multiple jurisdictions. The final phase of that project would be partially in the city of Tucson, partially in Pima County, and then the balance of it would be in Marana, just south of Ina Road, all the way to Camino del Cerro. And that section of the road, initially in the RTA plan, was scoped to be 3 lanes, essentially a continuous left turn lane and then 2 travel lanes. Currently, it is 2 travel lanes. So over the last 10 years or so, there's been multiple studies done. One of them was done by the county, and the proposal was made by the county that that section should be a 4-lane section instead of a 3-lane section. So as a result, that is one of the final phases of an RTA project, Silver Bell Road, that is recommended to move to the next RTA plan, so we can have the voters involved in that decision to change the scope from 3 lanes to 4 lanes with sidewalks, bike lanes, drainage facilities, and hopefully that will be in the next plan for voters' consideration.
That would be a wonderful amenity. And that is also an awesome segue, since we're talking about moving this into RTA next, to talk about what in the world is RTA next?
Similar to the napkin conversation when we started talking about when the current RTA expires in June of 2026, what are we going to do next? So the concept of RTA next was basically born as 20 years of RTA funding. Granted that we've been able to accomplish a lot with that, it's still not enough. As a region, when we look at our transportation needs, we're looking at roughly $32 billion worth of unmet needs in the region. So RTA Next really is a continuation of the current RTA as a solution for the regional partners to continue to enhance the transportation system for another 20 years for the same amount of tax. We're still talking about a 0.5-cent sales tax, so it's continuing the same tax for another 20 years. And potentially we're looking at May of 2025 to go back to the voters with a new plan. And according to the state law, the voters have to approve not only the tax, also the plan that goes with it as well.
Do you have a need for speed? Whether you want to improve your race time or just have fun, the Run Marana series has something for everyone. Choose your challenge and sign up for one of the 5 races held throughout the year. Visit maranaaz.gov/run to sign up. Your speed, your run, your town.
Whether you're starting a business or looking to expand in Marana, our Town Development Services staff will walk you through the steps towards success. Learn about business licenses, development permits, business loans, local and state resources, and more. Let's get to work. For more information, visit maranaaz.gov/business development.
Why would you want to work for the town of Marana? Well, let's hear what our employees have to say.
I feel like working for the town of Marana makes you feel like a person, not a number.
I really wanted to work for the community where I lived.
I have children that play in the parks.
Working for a public entity, it's kind of a sacred trust. I like that. It's an honor to serve.
The town's mission is to provide 5-star service for a thriving community.
To me, 5-star service comes from within. It's a drive to make your surroundings a better place.
Providing community service like the Founders Day Parade, the swim lessons, clean drinking water.
Of course, the benefits are great.
I get sent to to seminars and conferences. And
Town of Marana compensates vacation.
We do have an amazing gym facility, alternate schedules as well. Our employees are also able to telework.
My supervisor in particular really cares about our work-life balance.
My colleagues are fun. It's just a fun place to work.
We have a culture of friendship.
The people in general that work here and apply here all want to make a difference in their everyday life for themselves and for the community.
Let's make an impact on our community. Visit maranaaz.gov/careers and apply now.
All right, so you made an important distinction there that it is a half-cent, continuing half-cent. So if RTA Next doesn't happen, there's less a half a cent that people would be paying. If RTA Next comes to fruition, then they're going to continue to pay the same amount on their sales tax that they are right now.
Exactly. So the current tax will sunset in June of 2026. So if we do not have a new plan in place, that half-cent sales tax will go away July 1, 2026. But by definition, that is additional resources that we all need to improve our transportation system. So that revenue goes away if the voters don't approve a new plan. The new plan is a continuation of the existing tax, which also needs voters' approval to continue at the same rate.
All right. So when we talk about projects for this RTA Next, how are we deciding? We just putting a bunch of things in a hat and reaching in and drawing out and who's the lucky winner that gets their project done? Or what does that process look like right now? And what are some of those projects that could potentially be on the ballot?
Of course. So all of our partner entities, cities, towns, tribal governments, counties, state, they all have an ongoing plan that identifies their transportation needs. So we start with their plans. Each entity recognizes the needs for what improvements are needed, and so they would prioritize the list of projects and then bring their prioritization list to the table for the bigger kind of a conversation on regional importance of those projects. So to put it in perspective, back in 2019, we had all of our partners submit list of projects that they felt were priorities and should be considered for possible inclusion into the RTA plan. That list was 108 projects, totaling to roughly $4.6 billion. So obviously the work begins. You have a list, and now you got to narrow it down, and you have to make those tough decisions on
narrowing it down from what to narrowing it down from 4.6 down to what?
Well, the current plan, as we speak, is projected to generate $2.34 billion. But at the same time, we recognize that there are going to be different elements in the plan. So for the purpose of those named corridors, 108 projects that were roughly $4.6 billion, the goal was direction from the RTA board was to narrow those down to $1.1 billion.
Oh, so we got to cut $3 billion.
3.5.
That's $3.5 billion. Yeah, see, I wasn't good at math. So $3.5 billion we've got to cut in order to get people's projects in. And that doesn't get 108 projects in.
No. So obviously,
not even close, right?
Yeah, obviously, as you start going through the project list, so you really have to prioritize the project list. You really want to think about how do you get the most return on the investment, which projects, again, by my definition, are the ones that get the most support from the community, which ones are the ones that if you go out there and talk to any person, that they would say, yes, you got it right, that is a project that needs to be addressed. And I'll put a perfect example, Quatero Road traffic interchange. Mm-hmm. I've lived in this region for almost 40 years, and to this day, every time I talk to someone and tell them I'm in the transportation business, They want to talk about Cotero Road traffic interchange.
You and me both, man. That's like the number one question I get from people that live in the Continental Ranch area, that live in the county on the other side, and Oro Valley. And when are you guys going to do something about Cortero and I-10?
Exactly. So that's the reason we look for opportunities to identify the projects that we believe the public would support. Again, and you said it early on, and I want to say it again. These are taxpayer dollars. We're going to our taxpayers. We're asking them to tax themselves, to invest in themselves. So what type of projects we want in there? We want the ones that they're fully going to get behind and support. Cotero Traffic Interchange, interesting enough, was on the list of 108 projects that was submitted. And I'm glad to tell you that it is on the short list, and we are continuing to look at opportunities to see how that project can be included in the RTA next, and hopefully have the funding to improve that intersection.
Yeah, that is our number one project. Now, I think we started off with like 12, and I think we're down to 3 that are on the short list.
Correct.
Which I feel pretty good about. They're significant projects. That Cortero is going to be upwards of how much?
Well, again, depends on the final solution, but currently we have it plugged in at $200 million, and I think
wow.
Give and take, no matter what we do, and the terminology everybody uses is value engineering, but at the end of the day, it's a give and take. I think we're going to probably end up in that same range, $200 million, regardless of how much value engineering we're going to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what are some of the other projects in there that you think are really going to appeal to the voters, or ones that you've been hearing about as somebody who's been in the transportation business and world for quite some time, that you think would be highly beneficial?
Well, at least let's talk about the ones in the Marana area. So Tangerine Traffic Interchange, again, in my opinion, that's a continuation of the current RTA Tangerine Road improvements. At the time, we didn't have full funding to improve the interchange itself, which would most likely include a grade separated crossing. Those at-grade crossings are going to continue to be a challenge as the traffic on the tracks increases. We want to make sure that we have more grade-separated crossings. So Tangerine Traffic Interchange is on the short list, and we hope to continue to have that conversation, because I really see the benefit to not only from a safety perspective, but from the future growth opportunity, that intersection. Interesting enough, that was one of the intersections that has always been talked about for many years, and glad to see it on the list. And then Ina Road improvements, and Ina Road, again, a major east-west corridor. This is east of I-10, major corridor. It's a commercial corridor. There's a lot of activity in there. People travel from all parts of the region, from the city, from the county, Oro Valley, you name it. And so that corridor really needs to be improved, and that's on the list as well, to go from 4 lanes to 6 lanes with a bicycle and pedestrian facilities to support that project. Okay, so how much work has to be done yet in order to get this thing across the finish line? So the hope is to be able to have a plan that we take to the voters in May of 2025, and working your way back. We want to make sure that we have a final plan approved by the governing body no later than December of 2024. So that gives you an opportunity between now and next year, which is, I would say, roughly 12 months, to really fine-tune the plan and go out there and talk to the public. We need, at the end of the day, again, I can't stress this enough, we need to gauge the public support and the appetite for being able to bring this plan back to the voters. So we want to take the next 12 months to make sure that we gauge that level of support from the public, make sure the plan has those elements that the public would support, and then ultimately we have to go through the procedural steps to get it on the ballot and put it in front of voters for their approval by May of 25. You know, I'm so glad to hear you talk about the public engagement piece of it, Farhad, because
That's just good governance. That's what we're here for. We're here to serve the people of our communities and listening to them and making sure that we get it right. I mean, certainly, you have the RTA board comprised of the mayors and then the heads of various entities, and you have the CAC, the Citizens Advisory Committee, and they're certainly weighing in and providing feedback and input, and the Technical Management Committee that I sit on, the heads of the various jurisdictions from a managerial standpoint. We're all talking about it, and we're all kind of laying out, what we believe is important. But in the end, it doesn't matter ultimately what we believe. It matters what the community wants. It matters what the residents want. And I'm so glad to hear that we're going to spend a lot of time, effort, and energy reaching out to the community, letting them know kind of, hey, here's our draft. What do you guys think? And get their feedback. So I'm looking forward to that piece of it, to really hear from them, hey, this is you're spot on, or, you're spot on in this area, need to tweak that or whatever, because ultimately they're the ones that are going to approve it, right? I mean,
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the fun that we get the most satisfaction from, just being out there, interacting with the community, taking their input, and being able to go back and really truly consider their input and make adjustments based on what we hear from the community. Again, I've been in this business for almost 30 years, and I would say that's the most passionate part of what I do, is to go out there and talk to the public and get their feedback.
Okay, so RTA next. It's around the corner. Let's talk about what happens if RTA next doesn't happen. Let's say it goes to the voters and they shoot it down. I mean, I'll tell you right off the bat, Farhad, the town of Marana is in no position to be able to afford $200 million on Cortero and another $150 million on Tangerine and another $42 million on Ina Road. So, from my perspective, I can tell you that those projects aren't going to happen. I mean, is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, definitely. And that's really going back to why we started the RTA back in 2004, was to make sure that we always have RTA as that supplemental funding solution to our challenges. So I still believe to this day that everybody hopefully recognizes that without it, nobody's coming to rescue. There's no state funding that can fill that gap. There's no federal funding that can fill that gap. RTA was a local, regional funding to solve our regional challenges. And if it goes away, then we have to see, well, what are the things that we truly can do by ourselves? And you just said it, very limited, smaller number of projects, and potentially waiting a long time for state or federal dollars to come in. So RTA, to my belief, it really is the model of how, as a region, we collaborated, came together, solved the problem, and we should continue to do that. If it does not pass, immediately, overnight, that's 30% reduction to our transit system in the region.
Almost a third. That's huge.
Exactly. Yeah. Almost a third of what is spent in the region on providing transit services is coming from the RTA, and that could overnight immediately will cease to be available for transit operations. In addition to that, obviously, we would have safety projects, for example, or additional enhancements that we would not be able to continue to provide funding for, and obviously all the named projects. So I would venture to say, from the $1.1 billion that we're targeting to be on that new plan, if the next RTA does not pass, by comparison, you're looking at potentially, best case scenario, combining all state and federal dollars, you may only get 10% of that over the next 20 years.
Wow. So I think, Farhad, that we as a region are fortunate to have somebody in the director position at the PAG RTA who has the experience and understanding and history with the RTA, and now is trying to see us, help us transition into RTA next. So I'm curious, from your position, your perch, where you've been able to kind of see where we've been and where we're going. Any lessons learned from the first RTA, in comparison to where we're going with RTA next?
Yeah, so I think part of the challenge we had with the current RTA was the revenue projections were somewhat optimistic, and soon after, almost 2 years after the current RTA passed, we recognized with the Great Recession how those revenues were not coming in as anticipated. So one lesson learned is to make sure you're not too optimistic about the revenues. And then most recently, within the last 2 years, we've seen the impact of the inflation and cost increases and how projects are coming in some cases 40, 50% over those cost estimates. So the second lesson is to be a little bit more conservative with your estimating. So at least whatever you end up in the plan, you're able to deliver, whether it's making adjustments to the revenue side or the expenditure side. So those two were critical. The third one that I can't stress this enough, and we've hit on it several times, to make sure that the public really truly understands that without the RTA, these projects would not happen. And I think we have, over the last 17 years or so, we have been a little bit casual about talking about the benefits of the RTA. And again, not that I want people every day to sit down at breakfast and talk about RTA, but recognize that without the RTA, that is roughly $2 billion worth of investments that we would not have in this community. Recognize how your commute has been improved, recognize how some growth opportunities and some economic development opportunities have been supported by those RTA investments. So I think that's important for the public to recognize that and understand that, because when we go back to them again, hopefully they can readily identify that this is truly something that adds value to the community.
Excellent. Well, that's exactly why we're here today, to talk about the RTA and the RTA Next and why it is a benefit, and we got quite a bit of work to do to get this thing across the finish line. But I think everybody's up for the task, and I know you've been working hard. I know the different committees have been working hard, and so I appreciate you joining us here today, Farhad, to kind of share with us what the RTA is, what it can do for us, and where we're at with the RTA Next.
Thank you. Appreciate the invitation. If I can put a plug in, rtamobility.com, please go in there. We're collecting comments. And if you want me to come and talk to you, please send me an email. I'll be happy to sit down and talk to anyone, anywhere, anytime.
There you have it, folks. Farhad Moghimi, the director of PAG, saying he's going to meet you wherever you want to meet to talk about PAG RTA, and we really appreciate that. Listeners, thank you so much to you as well for tuning in. Until next time. Submit your questions by visiting maranaaz.gov/realtalk, and we'll answer them right here. To receive notifications for new releases, remember to click subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Also, please follow the town on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay up to date on current news and events.